everybody, and thank you so much for joining us today. To give our lovely host a little introduction, my name is Hannah, and I'm a third-year student at U of C in natural science. With me today is Miles and Lyndon. Miles, do you want to give yourself a quick introduction?
For sure. Hi, my name is Miles. I am a fourth-year political science student at the University of Calgary, and I have been involved in YCR since about April of this year.
And I'm the auto response, Lyndon. I'm a recent graduate from the University of Lethbridge. I got my degree in history. I've been with YCR for 2.5 years. Yeah, I'm really excited that you were able to join us today.
Amazing. Thank you so much, you guys. Welcome back to YCR's Food for Thought series. For those of you who are just seeing YCR for the first time, we are an advocacy group made by students and young professionals for students and young professionals. We believe that Canada can have a strong future in resources, the economy, and the environment. Please connect with us on social media at any time if you want to learn more about what we do. Joining us today is Dr. Sara. Dr. Sara is the founder of SVB Green Access, a nonprofit organization that promotes and provides an affordable and inclusive energy program to areas in which energy poverty exists. I might butcher your last name, so I'm going to apologize well in advance, but Dr. Vakhshouri has 2 decades of experience of working in the energy industry with extensive experience in global energy market studies, energy strategy, energy security, and geopolitical risk. Dr. Vakhshouri has a PhD in energy security and Middle Eastern studies. She has 2 master's degrees, one in business management, which is specifically international marketing, and another master's in international relations. She's been a senior energy fellow at the Atlantic Council and at the Oxford Institute for Energy Studies, among many other incredible achievements. Before I hand the floor over, please know that attendees are encouraged to ask questions throughout the presentation using the Q&A box below, and we will address all of these at the end of the session. And without further ado, I'll get out of the way here and I will let you get on with it.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for your kind introduction and for your advocacy group for having me today. It's very exciting. I always enjoy to work with the students. I do teach and I have interns, and I always enjoy working with the students. It's always exciting to see how students think out of box, come up with solutions, and that fresh flow of thought is always very exciting and refreshing. So we're going to talk today about energy security, global energy security, and the role of Canada. Energy security, well, and we have a historian with us. If I just want to add a bit of historical background to that, it goes back all the way to First World War, when at that time Churchill was the Lord of Admiralty in Britain, and he decided that if he changes the fuel of British Navy from coal, which was supplied locally from Wales, to oil, which at that time was imported from Persia, the fleet will, the warship would move faster, and this would be an advantage for them in the war. However, this would at the same time create a vulnerability for the country, because now they had to depend on the resources that was coming from outside. So that's really, we could find one of the first major historical point that energy and security became together, unite together, because the security of British Navy and also national security of Britain was now very much entangled with the security of oil in Persia, but also security of flow of oil, but also affordability of that. So energy security is, when we are talking about in terms of its classic concept, is an uninterrupted flow of energy supplies at affordable price. But obviously this is from point of view of consumers. If you're a producer, energy security for you is having the security of demand. Otherwise you can't sell your energy resources, like for instance with Russia, we just had the Russian price cap implemented on December 6th. So whatever impacts the flow of your export and markets, that would be a threat to the security of demand if you are a major producer in the market. Now, if I just want to run back to today, from Churchill's time to today, and where we are now is a point that we are not talking anymore about oil crisis, we're talking about energy crisis. Again, flashback to history, we had oil crisis 2 times, the first oil shock and the second oil shock. The first one and the second one, the Arab oil war and or Arab oil embargo, and also the Iran-Iraq war, which heavily interrupted the security of oil supplies in the market, and we call them as oil shocks. But now, at this point of history, we're talking about the energy crisis and how post-COVID recovery of demand happened very quickly. Because if everybody remembers, during COVID, we had to stay home. We were not traveling, we were not driving, we were not consuming goods as much. So suddenly the demand for energy, especially in the transportation field, shrinked significantly. And we had a demand shock because the demand significantly was reduced. But since we start getting our vaccinations, we start being more mobile, travel more, drive more, and also those stimulus checks that most of the governments were supporting the consumers to consume more, it all helped the demand to grow. So demand in post-COVID started to rapidly grow in a healthy way, but supply could not catch up as fast as demand was growing. The main reason for that was lack of investment. So in order to keep up, maintain, and increase energy supply, any source of energy, we need investment. And during the years of COVID, because of very low demand and very low prices of energy, sources of energy, especially fossil fuels, most of the investors significantly reduced their investment in energy industry. Another issue that impacted the investment in energy industry, especially fossil fuel, are all the environmental policies, having policymakers, for instance, Biden administration in White House, that are discouraging investors from investing in fossil fuels and are encouraging them to divert their investments from fossil fuel to more renewable energy, which ultimately is a good solution. However, these policies cause a huge and rapid diversion of investment from fossil fuel to renewable energy. Therefore, at the time that our demand, the global energy demand, started to rapidly increase, we didn't have same speed of supply increase. This shortage in the market, shortage of supply in the market, started obviously immediately impact on prices, and prices start increasing. And the Russia-Ukraine war exacerbated the effect of the underinvestment and shortage in the market. Because now we had a major supplier of both oil and natural gas, and also petroleum products, fuel, that is in war with Ukraine. And we had lots of different sanctions and restrictions on Russia until today. Why we call it an energy crisis? Because it's not just oil being involved in this. We have different sources of energies, obviously, all affected by this crisis in the market. So looking at it as going back to our concept of energy security is so easy to conclude here. We have a shortage of supply. The flow of supply is in high risk because we always have a geopolitical risk that could impact the flow of supply. And that's why in the market, we always have spare capacity, which traditionally OPEC members and Saudi Arabia holds that. But for them, these countries producing at maximum level, they don't have much spare capacity left in the market. We are in cold season, which seasonal demand is higher. We are in a war. I mean, not all of us, but Russia is in war and major suppliers. There are sanctions, not embargo, voluntarily sanctions that are countries like US or Europe put on themselves to stop importing Russian oil. We have ban on, we have a cap, price cap on Russia, that Russia could react on that. Now, European and G7 insurance companies and financial networks are not going to easily finance or help the logistics of Russian export. So all of these create uncertainty in the market on supply side. We don't know how much of supply could be interrupted tomorrow. In the near future, how much supply is going to be cut back from market. Now, market, when we're talking about market, it has two sides. It's a market fundamentals. We talked a lot about supply. What is going on with demand? So when we're talking about markets fundamental, we're talking about the balance of supply and demand. Well, the demand naturally increased after the COVID ease on COVID and vaccination. But we also have uncertainty on the demand side, and that's China's restrictions on COVID. We do not know when China is going to put an ease and how much on its COVID restrictions. So we don't know how many Chinese people tomorrow or next week or next month are going to start drive, go to work, or travel. And this is also another uncertainty on the demand side in the market. And anytime we have uncertainty, the environment is very hard for investors. Because when you want to put your money down, you want to be sure about short-term, medium-term, and long-term. I talked about short-term, medium, long-term because I always like to look at every issue in terms of time. We cannot look at a problem just in short-term or long-term and come up with conclusion. We should definitely look at any problem or solution or any issue in terms of time, dividing the time. Is it in a short term, long term, mid term? For instance, in the short term, there is not a quick fix for Russian supply. There is not a quick alternative for 7 million barrels oil exports of Russia or significant gas. How would long term look like? Can we look at alternative sources of energy, moving away from oil and gas, looking more nuclear? Where is Russia standing on? Again, here is interesting because many people are saying that in long term, the market would be completely independent from Russia and Russia will lose in influence in the market because countries will start using less oil and gas. But when we look at energy transition, most of the countries are planning to look at nuclear as a big chunk of energy mix in their country. And looking at Russia, between 40 to 50% of nuclear fuel cycle enrichment is all done inside Russia or by Russian companies. Also, Russia is managing a lot of those new uranium mines. So going back to energy strategy and energy security, again, when we are looking at it, it depends which timeline we're looking and how things look like at that in that timeline. Now I would like to change my focus to Canada and where is the role of Canada in global energy security. So Canada traditionally had a very close linkage with US and also US, Canada, Mexico in terms of North America energy integration and energy alliance. And for a long time, US was the market for Canadian energy resources, mostly fossil fuel, especially oil. And but things are changing. Now we have a new administration that is trying to reduce the role of fossil fuel. There are pipelines like Keystone Pipeline that they left without any ending to those pipelines, or they were canceled. We also have not just the policymakers being against importing more oil, but or fossil fuel, but also public opinion in the United States. But what is happening is that transition is not a quick overnight change. If anything is a quick overnight change without having that required infrastructure in place, it's going to create crisis and it's going to create vulnerability and threat to energy security. For instance, during the pre-election, it was important, obviously, for US administration to have the prices of gasoline lower for market, for controlling the inflation, for voters, for US economy. And we had President Biden constantly reaching out to OPEC and asking them to bring the prices down. But what if that relation between Canada and US stays strong? And for instance, US, instead of bringing more oil from Middle East, would still bringing more oil from Canada. So these are some of the policy issues that we could discuss. But looking at Canada specifically, what I would see is that Canada, especially in Alberta, is hosting a huge oil and gas resources. And Canada could play a major role in energy transition, because energy transition does not mean zero oil or gas. We're going to, if we are all the cars are electric cars, and if we can have planes that are not using jet fuel anymore, which is still, we are very far technologically from them. This is just the share of oil being displaced in transportation. But everything around us, from pen to toys, medical, the medicine, cosmetics, even the body parts of those EVs are all produced from oil in petrochemical. So we still need a huge amount of oil and also natural gas. Still, oil and gas are the most affordable and sustainable sources of energy for us, unless we have a new technological evolutions that there are other sources that are more affordable and sustainable. Here, Canada, if Canada could expand its access to international markets, instead of just being dependent on US for its security of demand, because Canada is also a major exporter, or major producer. So security of energy for Canada is also security of demand. Instead of only looking into one market, United States, easy market, my neighbor, expand its capabilities and also markets. For instance, if Canada would start exporting its gas in terms of LNG to Europe, now both Europe and Canada could benefit severely from that, because now that Europe is trying to replace natural gas, Russian natural gas, US LNG exporters made a huge profit here by exporting US natural gas way beyond the market that is sold or produced in US to Europe, but also a huge help for European markets. So a huge chunk of substitution of natural gas to Europe came from United States, and Canada could play similar role. So looking into, but again, that goes to policy. It might be like Alberta's governments might look at this in a rational way, but maybe the federal government in Canada doesn't like to export gas to Germany. So these are always policy limitations, but pretty much we have seen that Europe coming and asking Canada. Wasn't there a meeting between German officials and federal government in Canada? But what happened? I don't know. I didn't see any LNG deal coming out of that. But yeah, I mean, so this is part of it is policy. But what I think is that because Canada is a responsible country, and what now we have Pathway Alliance, that the major Canadian fossil fuel producers have created that alliance to create a response to produce oil and natural gas in a responsible way, which means to capturing the carbon or produce or having a process of production that is clean or less harmful to environment. Then we could argue that Canada could have a very critical role in global energy security in terms of being a reliable source, because Canada is less prone to geopolitical factors. The oil from Canada doesn't pass from Strait of Hormuz, and that any day could be subject to geopolitical crisis. It's coming from a safe, relatively safe and more reliable source. it is sustainable because of, again, geopolitically, Canada is a much safer location that, for instance, a place that there is constantly war in a region that is war going on, or there is a threat of drone attack of a neighboring country on your facilities. So it's reliable, sustainable, but it can also be responsible. So if we are ready to pay premium energy for clean energy, and Canadian producers are able to give us that energy that produced in a cleaner process and more responsible, then that's a great option. Nevertheless, affordability is the key. In US or Canada, we might be able to pay premium prices for energy and make sure that this is clean, but we have severe energy poverty in many countries like Sub-Saharan Africa, and these people cannot just pay premium energy for cleaner sources of energy. And we have to remind policymakers that energy access and energy poverty and fundamentals of energy security is affordability. And just want to finish my remarks about affordability and energy security. It's very important to always keep in mind that there is a very close relation between energy, food, and water security, because we need energy to have safe water for drinking, for irrigation, for sanitation. We also need energy for food. And we saw the effect of that during the Ukraine-Russia war, that when the prices significantly increased, especially natural gas prices, many fertilizer companies, factories that they were producing fertilizer from natural gas, they closed or they reduced their production. The prices of food start increasing. Also, food is transported from one place to the other place. Most of our food is not produced locally. And that transportation cost, when the energy prices are higher, increases. And when the fuel prices are high, food prices are high, we have higher inflation. And the water security. There's still more than 1 billion people in the world that don't have access to energy, to power, and also safe water for the same reason. So I think these are so many already issues that I discussed, but I think it's very important for policymakers. Obviously, no one denies the impact about the crucial and importance of our responsible production and responsible consumption behaviors on the environment. But also at the same time, we cannot ignore the resources we have, the need the world has to those resources, and also the affordability of those resources for the world. And I think that Canada, considering the sheer amount of resources it has, the location of the country, being far from most of those geopolitical threats, being a reliable partner, and also in terms of responsible production, in terms of carbon emissions or any other harmful emissions that could being produced from the process of natural and fossil fuel production, it could have a significant role in global energy security. But again, it comes the policy limitations. I guess that's your job. You are the advocacy organization, and I leave it to you.
There's so many fantastic points in there, and especially, yeah, first of all, thank you so much for sharing your perspective. Especially as we're talking about how fortunate that we are in Canada. I know that that's a discussion that comes up in my household a lot, is we are very grateful to be here and be in a pretty secure place. But as a post-secondary student, a lot of my peers do have trouble keeping up with the rising cost of everything. So what you're saying is so applicable and so timely, and it really does apply to everybody. There's nobody that can escape.